Hello, Silberman College of Business. Thank you for joining us. We are fortunate enough to have the Bergen County Estate Planning Association present to us today, and it will be a full 45, 50 minutes of information that you never thought you would want to know or actually think to ask about. So I'm going to turn the panel over to Ken Horowitz, who will introduce all of our panelists, but three things I want you all to keep in mind. One, there'll be PDP credit at the end. I will share a slide with everybody's information for all of our panelists at the end. And last but not least, all questions will be answered at the end. So please, as you are listening to the presentation, by all means, put your questions into the chat and we will get to them at the end. So Ken, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Silberman College of Business students and anybody else from FDU who may have joined us. And I turn the table over to you, please, or the floor.
Thank you, Paige. Thank you. So yes, I'm acting as the moderator for this discussion. As Paige says, we have 5 panelists who you'll all get to meet, and then we'll have a Q&A at the end. So again, I want to thank you for taking time out to learn more about estate planning and gain some additional knowledge if from what you know so far, or gain to maybe if you have some information, some knowledge which you've gained in this area. Estate planning, an overview. I'm going to show you a slide here real quick. So you can all see this slide here. This estate planning is a team effort. It's a team effort. A successful estate plan is the result of a collaboration between several advisors. Many of them you'll meet today. And you can see these advisors that make up an estate planning team. I'm going to tell you a story to give you an illustration of the importance of estate planning and why it's important to take the time out to do this. It's called the Joe Robbie story. Joe Robbie was the owner and founder of the Miami Dolphin football team franchise. At the time of his death in 1990, the franchise was worth hundreds of millions of dollars. However, because he had not successfully executed an estate plan, his family was forced to sell the entire franchise in order to pay an estate tax of almost $50 million. Now the franchise is worth billions, and unfortunately, someone else owns it. Unfortunately for the Robbie family. Fortunately not unfortunate for the people who currently own it. So granted, not all businesses are worth in the billions, okay, but the impact has the same significance at all levels. We put out the school put out to promote this event, and I'm going to finish here. One of the things that we had this headline that said, what do these famous people who died have in common? And we listed a few of these famous people. Actually, there are dozens, but we listed a few of the famous people. We listed people like Martin Luther King, Prince, the entertainer, Michael Jackson. Does anyone know? I don't know if Paige or Melissa, if one of the people in the audience, if they're able to jump in, or they could put in the chat if they know the answer to what these 3 people had in common who passed away. The answer, however, is the fact that they did not have a will. Right, a will is a very important document in estate planning. It's one of the key components. And this is a good segue to our first speaker. Our first speaker, Nick Keller, is the trust and estates attorney you see on our pie chart here, part of our team. I'm going to hand this over now to our first speaker, Nick Keller, and he'll explain to you why a will. He'll tell you more about wills.
Thanks, Ken. As Ken mentioned, my name is Nick Keller, and I'm a trust and estates attorney at the firm of McCarter English in Newark, New Jersey. I'll touch on a little bit more about what a trust and estate attorney does, but I have some initial remarks stemming from what Ken said as well. So So the concept of a will and the concept of death really raises a number of other issues that we confront in our practices as professionals, such as like what happens to a person's property when somebody dies, or what is property at all? How should that property be disposed of? To whom? Did the person who passed away have a will? What about a trust? Are any taxes due as a result of the person's death? Do tax returns have to be filed, and when they have to be filed? So these are just some of the critical questions that we confront with respect to a person's death every day. And since the members of this panel are professionals from different backgrounds, sometimes we confront these questions at different points in time. But one thing's really important, and Ken touched on this earlier, it's that with respect to a successful plan, professionals like accountants, lawyers, investment advisors, and the like have to collaborate on the issues. So for me, I'm going to discuss the approach with respect to estate planning from the perspective of a lawyer. And I really confront these issues at two critical periods. That's a little bit oversimplified, but the first critical period might be if a client comes to me in connection with the estate planning or the drafting process. And sometimes clients might be referred to me by an accountant or a financial advisor. And in those cases, like I mentioned, I communicate with the professionals to make sure we implement the right plan. But in other cases, clients don't have a lot of direction or are professional at their exposure, and they say, Nick, I think I need a will, but I'm not really sure. So the client might say, I have closely held business interests, or I expect to inherit significant assets from my parents at some point in the future, or I have young children, or I even have life insurance policies and I don't know how to deal with them. But what do I do? So for those clients that need some direction, sometimes I start with the inverse. What happens if the clients, what happens to your assets if you hadn't actually made a will at all? In New Jersey, there are statutes that apply in that situation. And a statute is a particular type of law that we have. And those laws of, in that situation, it's called laws of intestate succession, intestacy laws. Those laws are best looked at as like someone's best guess of what a person might have done if they actually got around to making a will. Most clients decide that they would prefer to dispose of their property in the way that they intend and not leave it up to something like a statute or a law. So a will can help a client. It's a document that can help a client accomplish a number of objectives upon death, including paying enforceable debts, appointing a guardian for young children, ultimately disposing of your property, designating an executor, which would be someone a particular individual, or it could be an institution that helps to deal with the client's last affairs, such as admitting or filing the will to the probate court, and also dealing with tax returns. But sometimes I don't always confront those issues for the first time in the planning process. Sometimes the issues are not presented to me until after the person dies. And in that situation, that might be because my firm wasn't involved in the planning process. But in any event, the process of dealing with a person's last affairs is typically referred to as something called administration. And administration, like planning, also involves a process and collaborative effort between accountants, lawyers, and other professionals. And that process can take sometimes months or even longer. And in that situation, sometimes the client might be the executor, and we're advising that person with respect to probate and tax returns, and ultimately what has to happen with respect to distributions at the end of that process. So looking back on all that and where I am today, and in terms of some of these issues that I'm confronting as an estates and trust attorney, when I was back in college, I really didn't have any sense that I would become a lawyer focusing on these issues, complicated estate and trust issues. So for me, some of these issues came together when I was in law school, and I just happened to take a class that I really liked. But really, even then, I didn't have a clear sense of like how many career paths a person could take that would involve or overlap with estate planning. So to the extent you're trying to figure that out, and if you're going through different classes and experiences in school, sometimes exposure to new concepts and experiences like this will help give you a better sense of what you might like to do and might be a good fit for you. I realize like the time period is kind of short. So if you have questions, or if you want to learn more about my practice or some of the issues that we confront and how I overlap with other professionals, how I got to where I am, please don't hesitate to reach out, and we can certainly make contact information available.
Thank you, Nick. And again, if you have any questions, just please put them in the chat, the Q&A, and then we'll circle back at the end. And Nick, yeah, thank you for keeping to the 5 minutes. So we're making sure one of the parameters, we're just keeping each speaker to 5 minutes. Keep this rolling. Thank you there. Next up is Rachel, our team member who is our CPA. So go ahead, take it, Rachel.
Thanks, Ken. So I'll start a little bit by just talking a little bit about my background. I actually meet a lot of college students. I am an accountant. I'm a CPA. Our firm is out of Ridgewood, New Jersey, BDG-CPAs. And I'm full service CPA firm, which specializes in accounting, auditing, and tax services. So oftentimes I think back, I interview and we recruit a lot of college students. And I know that when I was back in college and going through the recruiting process, I was a little overwhelmed and didn't know what I wanted to do. I had this accounting degree, but there are different areas that you can do. You can be a private accounting, a public accountant, and then in public accounting, do you want to do tax or audit? And that was something that I wasn't sure about. And it turns out that I went to a firm that actually is a smaller firm, regional firm, that I had the opportunity to get experience in both accounting, in auditing, and in tax. And it turns out that the first couple of years, I actually had a lot of accounting and auditing work, which entails basically auditing companies, and accounting projects and special project work. And after those 2 years, I was sitting down with the partners of the firm, and they said, Rachel, you really should do more tax work. And so I got involved in more tax work, and I really enjoyed it. And the main point is that you never know what you're going to enjoy doing until you get to try it. I then went on to get my master's of taxation, and I became the tax partner in charge. And I actually stayed at the same firm that I started with after graduation from college, which is also very unusual. But the thing, what I want to share with you is that the accountant is oftentimes the trusted advisor in the relationship. As Ken showed the pie chart, estate planning is definitely a team approach. Taylor, who's the financial advisor, talks with most clients a lot. I, as a CPA, also talks with clients a lot because you do have to pay taxes each year, and that filing deadline was just the other day. Hopefully everyone got their taxes in on Tuesday. But I do speak with clients, and it's important for me to be there for my clients and to not only advise them on taxes and how they can save money on taxes, but also in the different areas from financial planning and tax planning. Nick talked about meeting clients, and it's important as far as like from a planning standpoint. Well, I'll share one story with you, how we had a client who was a family-owned business, and the president of the company who had his kids, and then ended up bringing his grandkids in and set up trusts for each of these grandkids. And the company ended up selling, for over $100 million. But these trusts that were set up, that basically saved 10 million went to the grandkids, and that basically helped from an estate planning standpoint because that was less money in his name, and to lower his estate. I want to turn it over. I don't want to take up too much time.
Perfect.
And basically, please reach out. Feel free to reach out with any questions.
Great. Thanks, Rachel. Right on time. We're like perfect at this. We could take the show on the road. Again, we'll put up everyone's contact information at the end, so you can reach out to any of these people. Next up is Dan, our insurance specialist, also an area that's near and dear to my heart. It's an area that I work a lot in, but Dan he picked the longest straw, so he gets to talk about it today, how life insurance impacts estate planning. So take it away, Dan.
Thank you, Ken. So yes, life insurance is certainly a big part of my practice. I am a financial advisor with a specialty in insurance and also in business succession planning. So how did I get there? I graduated from Fairleigh Dickinson. I went to the Metro campus, Teaneck Hackensack.
Wait, what?
And, yeah, started.
Okay, all right. You're my fave. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay.
Well, you're cutting into his time here.
I soared right to the top. So I'm putting myself in your chair. When I was in Fairleigh, I started out in business management, and it was great. And I took all the courses, all the economics, macro, micro, right? I took accounting, which quite frankly wasn't all that enjoyable, but I saw it as sort of a necessary evil, because my thought was upon graduation, I was either going to become a lawyer like Nick, or I was going to continue in accounting, in public accounting like Rachel, or I was going to become a CFP, a certified financial planner. And I felt that I needed a trade. I wanted to have a skill that I could bring to the marketplace and then leverage into different directions. So I did graduate and interviewed back then what was considered the Big 8. Now they call it the Big 4. I think it might even be fewer, right? And I chose PricewaterhouseCoopers, right in Hackensack was the office at the time. And I started out in audit and then moved into tax, a very traditional path for an accountant. And then my third year, 2 senior managers at PwC were leaving to go into the financial services industry, and they brought me over. And I started out in management and moved up the ranks. After 16 years, became a managing director, and then started my practice. And the reason I was attracted to estate planning and insurance, and again, at your age, I didn't even know what estate planning was. If you asked me about estate planning, I thought it was either a funeral parlor or a cemetery, but it's really about helping people and their families while they're alive. It's not really about death and dying, which is a very morbid subject. So what I do, the component of my practice that deals with life insurance, I think it serves people. It's a social good. It creates liquidity. If something happens to someone, it creates cash to take care of their family, to protect and preserve their business. And if they have a high enough net worth, they could be exposed to estate taxes, and that insurance cash protects the business and the other assets from being liquidated in a fire sale or an auction in order to pay the estate taxes. So I see insurance very much as a social good. What's it like? What's a day in the life of an insurance advisor? Well, there's a number of things that we do. Prospecting and marketing is a big piece of it. So I often say, if you have thin skin, it's probably not the right place for you, because there's going to be a lot of clients who have already had it done or feel they don't need it. So you've got to be rather persistent. You have to have the ability to talk to strangers. When we're kids, our parents tell us, don't talk to strangers. Then we go into the business world and they say, you better get out there and start talking to strangers. So there's a lot of marketing and prospecting that goes into it. It's also having the ability to gather data, connect with clients, ask them sensitive questions, and be able to really understand what their needs are. And there's an analytical side, and this is where the accounting and finance background comes into play. And it's a balancing act. You have to have some technical skills, but you also have to have human understanding so that you can relate to your client and formulate a plan and be able to analyze and design a plan and then make a presentation and to frankly get clients to get comfortable to move forward with you. So implementation is very important. I'll wrap up my 5 minutes with talking about some other considerations. Again, putting myself in your shoes, what I found was a lot of courses were geared towards working for a large company. Many times management finance courses presume that as a student, I'm going to go work for a Fortune 500 company. What I really enjoy about being a financial advisor, a life insurance advisor, and this goes for most of the folks on this Zoom today, we're essentially self-employed. I don't have a boss. That's good and bad. You know, people say to me all the time, why don't you take more time off? I say, well, I'm self-employed, but my bosses are, a real slave driver. So that, if you're someone who pushes yourself, you will find also that there's quite a bit of financial rewards. You get to set your own hours, you get to pick and choose the clients and who you want to work with and serve. And if you can survive and thrive in this industry, same thing with law and accounting and investments and trust business, it can be a very rewarding career. Disadvantages, in the early years, it's tough. As I said, a lot of prospecting, knocking on doors. There's no salary often in many of these careers in the insurance industry. So you're working on commissions. There's quite a bit of competition. So you need to get your skill set and your technical knowledge up to speed very quickly. And you're dealing with humans and all the ups and downs and, getting people to move from point A to point B. So I think it's a very interesting career. It's not something that is taught to us when we're college students, but I think it's something that you might want to look into if being self-employed and controlling your destiny and serving clients appeal to you. So like everyone else, I'm available. If you have questions, email, you can reach me afterwards. Did I finish on time, Ken?
Perfect. Really,
Okay.
just well honed presentation, and that's a good point, Dan. The fact that many of these disciplines, the underlying discipline, it is taught, or the skill set is taught in formal education, but formal education does not teach about life insurance very much. So that's a good point. Next up is our investment advisor, Taylor Thomas. Take it away, please.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Ken. And to follow up, Dan, I did not go to FDU. I could be second in line. My wife played soccer while she was at FDU and went there. So maybe I could be second favorite page. But welcome, everybody. Happy to be here. And a lot of my comments, too, would probably overlap with Dan's. But, speaking more to the investment advisor role is what I'll do today. A quick background. I was a finance undergrad and I really found a passion in finance, diving into economics and corporate finance is where I really started to kind of actually like school, really, honestly, before my finance classes. I was doing it just to do it because I had to get a degree. But finance really got my attention. So I concentrated in finance, then I got my CFP afterwards. Went into an investment advisor role, wealth management type of role for a couple of different firms, but now with a firm, we're located and based out of Ramsey, NCM Capital Management. And we do kind of two lines of service. So we will provide investment management. What does that mean? If a family has an account with, say, $100,000 in it, we'll take that account and come up with a plan and actually actively manage that account for that family to figure out or towards whatever goal they should have. And that's kind of one service that we offer. Second is financial planning. And that's where, everyone on this webinar today kind of merged together. So we offer and review kind of taxes and work with Rachel on that, or insurance and work with Ken and Dan on that. Estate planning and work with Nick. So those are our two different lines of services and what our families kind of work with us for. What does a day in the life look like? I think it's, and again, this would probably apply to a lot of the people here. it's a lot of kind of a day-to-day managing the ongoing happenings in the economy, what's happening with, with gross domestic product, what companies are doing well, what companies are doing poorly, and then how does that impact our accounts for clients? How do we think about that from a positioning standpoint? So we spend a lot of our time kind of diving into economics, corporate fundamentals to build out portfolios and manage them for families. And a lot of time is meeting with clients. And, I think just about anybody can be a financial advisor, investment advisor in an up market when the stock market is doing well. But ask a lot of us how things have been for the last 2 years when a lot of clients have either lost money or are flat in their accounts. The other part of the business and the job is sitting down with clients and families and building that confidence with them that you understand what's going on. You communicate, what you want to do in portfolios and have, really the trust being built there. That's how I kind of spend really a lot of my time. And then separately, being able to identify, and I think comes along with the CFP background, certified financial planner background, if you're not familiar, is being able to identify when there might be an issue, and then understand and know when to bring in someone like Rachel, who actually caught a massive tax issue for one of my clients and was able to get I think it was a $60,000 or $70,000 refund from the feds. But being able to know enough to know when to bring in and come around other professionals or like estate documents and discussing those with Nick to make sure that the family knows that there's a trusted group of individuals around them that kind of all are thinking together for the best benefit for this one family specifically. Every day is different. I think that's what I, kind of really like about my job. Every family is different. The issues are different. Certainly the stock market is different every day and is constantly changing, and things that impact the stock market and the economy, many of things that you've likely learned about in your economics classes, then kind of it's the rubber meeting the road. And that's really it. It's a fantastic career. It's a fantastic group of people to be involved with and watch, a plan come together and be worked out, be put into place, and then have it to be successful in the end. Like everybody else, I am certainly available to reach out to if you should have any questions. Again, Taylor Thomas, I know it doesn't say my name, with NCM Capital Management in Ramsey.
Thank you, Taylor. Well said. And our final speaker, certainly as important as anyone else in this collaboration of advisors, is the trust and the trust officer, the trust officer. Nadira is the trust officer, has an important role in the estate planning because she brings all of these pieces together to help execute and implement the entire plan and monitor it, more so than anything, monitor this plan throughout time. Nadira, go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you, Ken. And Ken is absolutely correct. So my role as a trust officer, the role of a trust officer, ties in all of the planning and advising piece together for our clients. So as you have the attorneys creating documents, and you have the investment advisors who are investing as to how these assets are invested, you have the accountants preparing the tax returns, you have the insurance specialists giving thoughts to where insurance can come into play in their estate planning. A trust officer executes and implements the plans that are put into place. And going back to the initial slide, all of these individuals, these professions, work hand in hand together. So collaboration is key for all of us to service one client. So you can see there's many trusted advisors for a client to contact from a planning perspective. Now, having said all that, let's pause and say, well, what is a trust? Many do not understand what a trust is. Nick had touched on some of the basic planning documents many of you probably are familiar with, such as a will or a power of attorney. A trust, not everyone necessarily has one or needs one. But so let's just briefly talk about the key components of a trust so we have a baseline understanding of it. And then we can dive into what is the role of a trust officer. So all trusts, for a basic understanding, it's created for a purpose. It's a legal document. It's a legal document that holds assets for someone's benefit. That's really the core basic understanding of what a trust is. And they may be created for various different reasons. People create trusts for tax planning, tax efficiency purposes, for control purposes, wealth transfer to family members, next generation, their children, their grandchildren. It's a slew of reasonings as to why someone may create a trust. So within a trust, it's important to know who are the key players within a trust. There are really three key players in the trust. The person who created the trust, better known as sometimes the grantor. There's other synonyms to that name, but let's stick with the grantor. That is the creator of the trust. Then you have the trustee. This is the person who executes the intent of the grantor. So everyone's creating a trust for a reason. So the trustee, think of them, they're the ones who are implementing that reason. Why did they create this trust? And making sure they abide by the terms of the trust. Then you have the beneficiaries. And you may think, well, you know, they're the ultimate best key player there, right? They benefit from the trust. Not always. Sometimes beneficiaries can only receive benefits from the trust for certain conditions. So again, you go back to the trust document to see what was the intent of the creator, the grantor, when they created the trust, and as to when the beneficiary can receive assets. To tie that all in, I'll give you a quick scenario. Mom and dad have two children, boy and girl. So mom and dad create a trust for their son and daughter. They see the daughter is very diligent, very savvy, very responsible. The son, not so much. So they create a trust, one for each of them. For the daughter, they say, well, she can receive funds when she turns 25 years old. So meaning she can receive those assets that fund the trust. And you're probably thinking, well, what type of assets fund the trust? It could be those marketable securities. It could be the shares of Apple, the shares of Google. Those are marketable securities. It could be real property. It could be the home in the Hamptons that they own. That could fund a trust. It could be gold. It could be those type of assets. Any assets those types of assets fund a trust. So here you have son and daughter. So the daughter is diligent, responsible, everything. So the parents say, okay, at age 20, 25, she can receive an outright distribution from the trust. If the trust has $100,000, at age 25, the daughter can receive $25,000. With the son, on the other hand, they create a separate trust for the son. They say, well, he's not all that responsible. If we give him the money, he'll go and buy this fancy car that he doesn't need and can't afford. So what we'll do is, but we want to make sure he's taken care of. So the trust will be written in a fashion where it says, we can distribute money to the son if the son shows he has a need. He would have to show the need by sharing with the professionals his financial statement. It could be whether he's working, how much money is he earning, his tax returns to see where is there a need for whatever purpose he's asking the money for. So very basic, very broad. That's really why people create trust. That's an example of why someone may create a trust. And that adds a little color to the understanding of it. So what do we do? What does a trust officer do? Well, as a trust officer, you work with the person who created the trust, the grantor. You definitely work with the trustee, and you also work with the beneficiary, because with the beneficiary, you're probably making those distributions to that individual. As a trust officer, those assets, the Google, the Apple shares, the real property, what have you, those are sometimes, at least from a financial sector perspective, they're housed here. We invest those assets. Now, pulling in and tying in with what Taylor had mentioned, we're managing those investable assets. So that would be someone like Taylor who's managing the investments on that. So from that perspective, the trust officer works with all individuals that are part of the planning team. And from a family perspective, you're dealing with not only the parents, you're also dealing with the children. A day in the life of a trust officer. Well, the trust officer is there to execute. So sometimes we end up being the bad guy because the parents created this trust, but yet they sometimes don't want to be the one telling the son or the daughter, you can't receive the money. So then we were the bad guy. We play good cop, bad cop. So we're sometimes the bad cop and saying, well, you can't get the money because per the terms of the trust, it states X, Y, and Z. So we can sometimes play that role and help the family dynamics. We sometimes like to refer to, so everyone can have fun at Thanksgiving Day at the table and no one's pointing fingers to the other. So sometimes that's our role. We'll be the bad guy because we're not sitting at the Thanksgiving Day table with the family. So that's it, broadly, in a nutshell, the role of a trust officer. So now going to my journey, how do I get here? Well, by background, I'm an attorney by background. I started off working at a private firm similar to Nick, did that for a few years before I ventured on to the private bank here. I've been at the firm for over 20 years. Clearly, I love what I do. I love the fact that I get to interact with these wonderful professionals, and we can help service a client. We can help service and plan out their estate planning needs, their financial planning needs, get to know their family members, and deliver for them. So that's my journey. So then you're thinking, well, you know, I'm not planning on going to law school or doing any of that. That's fine. In this role, we get individuals from all walks of life, all different majors. I know I believe in FDU, you have a paralegal studies certificate program or associate degree program. Those are some interesting classes, and that helps build the skill sets that we're looking for. What are we looking for? Not so much substantive materials. We can teach and train individuals on many facets of this role, but what we can't teach and train you is the simple bare bone basics, organization skills. Many individuals don't have that. If you're organized, if you're detail oriented, and you like to work with groups and are willing to collaborate, those are key skills that we look for. All of the substantive things you can slowly learn through practice and time. So from a nutshell, that's how I got here. These are the opportunities that are available in that trust officer space. If you're looking like, well, I have this major, that major, I have worked with trust officers who are history majors, poli-sci majors, finance majors, economics majors, just to give you some color, even accounting majors as well, just to provide a little color as to who occupies this space. Have any questions, feel free to reach out.
Thanks, Nadira. So, yeah, just reinforce that there are many paths that anyone could take to any one of these disciplines that you've heard from today. And Nadira, I'm sure there are times where you are fielding some tough calls from those beneficiaries, those disgruntled beneficiaries. So I'm sure it's a challenging part to your work. So that's it. Those are all the panelists. That's the streamlined version. You got the streamlined course on estate planning. One thing I'd just like to share with you before Paige takes it back over is if you like any of what you heard today and you want to stay plugged in to what we're doing at the council, you can follow us, like us here on these different sites, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. So take a snapshot of that, keep that as a resource, as a reference. Again, if you want to stay plugged in, stay connected to what we're doing in the council. Okay, Paige.
So we actually have our first question, and I thought it was an interesting question. How far ahead should I start thinking about estate planning? Who wants to answer that?
Who would like to answer that? Anyone? Okay, listen, I'll take a stab, and then and then I'll say something. Anyone could chime in. essentially, estate planning, right, there are many levels, right? It's kind of like a layer cake. So I would say that, you might say that when you're married and you have children, and therefore you have, people that you need to care to, that could be one time of your life, married with children. But let's say that you're not married and, you're a single person, but you have assets, substantial assets that at your death may create a tax. But also you want to create some direction as to where these assets go, right? That's a will. That's what a will is. It's a directive order, right? And the key thing is what I always say to clients is you actually have a will. Everyone has this will that we spoke about, this document, right? That tells what happens at someone's death. Everyone has one, even if you don't have your own, right? The state has one for you, but you can imagine it's probably not the one that you want. So that's why we encourage people to meet up with someone like Nick and get their own will. So you can control who gets the money, when, where, and how. Okay. And don't let it up to the state to determine that. So those are some ideas to keep in mind. Anyone else have what they'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I took the question maybe a different way from, is the student inquiring, at what point should I look into a career in estate planning? So I don't know if the question is, do they personally need estate planning, or how do they, look into the career? I would say if someone's looking into career, I would go back to what Ken pointed out earlier, follow the estate planning council, do some research, do some reading on your own in the field of estate planning, and then maybe consider trying to get an internship with a firm that offers estate planning, so you could get a real insider's glimpse as to what it would be like to do it as a career. The other thing I found pretty interesting too is if you have friends, your parents have friends, other people have friends, you have access to those who are in the estate planning world in any of these disciplines, see if you could sit down and talk to them a little bit and find a little bit more. So hopefully that's helpful.
I'll reiterate just what Dan said just real quick, is that by all means, if you have any interest in doing an internship in any one of these areas, again, reach out to members of the council. You could reach out to any one of us and we could put you in touch with people. But certainly there could very well be internship opportunities at the firms of the members of the council. Okay.
Right, and I'll just add also, it's that, estate planning is more of a niche area to concentrate on. So if you do want to be an accountant, to start really looking first as far as understanding accounting, and tax, I actually deal in all areas of the tax law, because I have, clients who are business owners. But you do need to address estate planning. There's individuals with high net worth who have set up trusts from an estate planning standpoint. So kind of also from that standpoint, as far as, look into what you want to study, and kind of also you want to master that actual activity. And then it doesn't hurt though to even talk to someone, or to even, visit a council meeting or something like that, to kind of talk and get some of these concepts. And there's lots of education webinars and seminars to kind of just talk about various areas, because there's so much in estate planning that's discussed.
And I'll just sum it up and highlight it. A key thing that you probably are hearing over and over is communicate, talk, have these conversations. That is the only way you will be able to learn more about it and see if this is a good fit for you. There's many opportunities. You took the first step by joining and listening to the panelists. So if you like what you hear, or something interests you, or if you just want to bounce some other thoughts and ideas, feel free to reach out to any one of us. I'm sure we're happy to spend some time with you.
So I received a couple of messages directly, so I'm going to share them with you. Questions. One, how do all of you get your business? So yes, a lot of it's word of mouth, but are you doing any sort of marketing and or how does that happen? And then the second question is, what about the analytics? So are you, especially from a financial perspective, working on any of the back end where a student who might not be interested in selling, but more interested in certain investments and why? If you could talk a little bit about those opportunities, that would be great.
Taylor, you wanna jump in on that?
Yeah, so there's definitely, I would say, depending on the size of the wealth management firm, obviously, if you go to a very large firm, they're going to have people, analysts that are following different sectors of the market, whether they're following financials or they following specific companies. And those people can do actual analytical work only, come up with recommendations based on what they see, read for whatever sector or stock that they may be following, and have those recommendations made to the company. Certainly at the large scale level, and I would include like Bank of America and others that are that size. But even at where I work, which is an independent registered investment advisor, even at some of the larger of those institutions have their own in-house designated kind of analyst role. Here at NCM, we kind of wear two hats, where we're doing both the implementation and the client service work, and also doing our own investment analysis that we then put together as a group for the individuals that work here to come up with our thoughts. But you can definitely do wear both hats. If you don't want to, be the person who's, like Dan said, if you don't have, such thick skin and don't getting the phone slammed down on you about it, buying an insurance product or following up with prospects, you certainly can do an analytical role only. And that'll certainly be part of the hiring process. It'll be specifically for analytics.
Thank you. And what about marketing? Like, are there marketing opportunities within your firms or related companies that you work for? There's a couple of marketing students on here, so I'm sure they're chomping at the bit to know about that.
I think there's tons. Yeah, I mean, in the financial services industry, insurance, investments, estate planning, there are major firms that are always marketing, whether it's through the internet, TV, print, radio, podcasts. I think the financial services industry is a huge consumer of marketing. So there are plenty of opportunities, and don't get me wrong, there are a lot of salaried positions in the financial services industry, as well as advisory or sales positions. So I think if you do a little bit of research there as a marketing person, you'll find there's a lot of opportunities in the estate planning world, and in the big banks, law firms market, CPA firms market. There's always going to be a marketing outreach to attract additional clients.
Yeah, there's no question that each of these disciplines that you heard from today, there's that client facing piece, but there's also the support piece. Okay, so that's in the office, providing the support to run, sustain, and build each of these businesses and practices. So you have both sides available to you. And certainly, marketing is totally key, more now than ever, because one of competition, because there's so many media channels of which to get your message out. And all these businesses that you're hearing from today need to stay in front of, if you will, their clients and the public potential clients. So marketing is key. It's what helps sustain each of these businesses, like with any company. Even in the legal, I mean, again, there's a support area in the legal field. Nick, like a paralegal, you just want to mention that real briefly, right? Does that make sense?
Sure. So my practice with estate planning in the estates area spans 2 different areas. So I do planning and administration, but I also deal with litigated disputed matters. So a paralegal is a critical part of our process. I mean, that person might help me with drafting estate and trust documents, or when someone passes away, might help with the administration. But on the disputed matters, like there might be someone that's helped me with filing papers in court, getting me ready to go to court, and dealing with other complicated matters. So it's certainly a team approach, much like this panel here. I mean, our internal group has a team approach as well, and a paralegal is like a inseparable part of our team. We couldn't operate without it.
Great. We actually did a panel a couple of weeks ago about careers in law firms when you're not a lawyer. So
Yeah.
thank you. Confirms that for sure.
Sure. Even on the marketing piece, I mean, our firm has a marketing professional internally that helps lawyers and others in the firm get themselves out there and present on like different topics, different things we're doing in our practice and things like that. So it might not, a law firm might not be the first place you think of when you have a marketing path, but there are certainly opportunities and maybe underutilized in firms and law firms and other places like it.
Any questions from our students? And I'm just going to pull up everybody's information again. I'm going to share the screen. So please, guys, take a picture so you can connect with everybody. Any questions? I think you could see everybody's information. Yep.
And Paige, I'll just share our how they can follow us again.
Yep,
Okay.
I have it. I can do that.
Great.
Sure. Perfect. Okay.
No questions? This is not the quiet group I know. I hope you're not worried about estate planning or texting your family to be like, do you have it, Will? What's going on?
That would be a good thing to do, actually.
It
there you
would
go.
be,
So
but
then we
nonetheless.
got our message across. Right. That would be a good
Really?
thing.
Going once, going twice? Nobody has questions? All right, well, I'll give them one more chance to think of questions.
Well, they all hung in there. I could tell you. It looks like, they all hung in till the end.
Of
So,
course.
that was good.
They're good. All right, I'm just going to pull up our PDP QR code. While you were all speaking, I actually sent our panelists, which I appreciate very much, LinkedIn invites. So I was able to do that. So I hope you will all accept. And here is our QR code. I'm going to share that right now. If it opens up. Okay, I'm going to share that.
I still need some credits for my degree. Can I use that?
No, I don't know if it'll
Is
work.
this-
I hope this is the right. No, this is the one I need. Okay. You should all get credit for this now. Does everybody see the QR code? Oops, no, because I didn't
No.
put it down. I didn't put it down low enough. Sorry, guys. There it is. You
Well-
get credit. Okay, but I think another question just came in too.
There it is.
Okay. Are you ever too young to have an estate plan?
No, like I said earlier, no, the answer is no, because I mean, you could be young, single, right? Like an entertainer, for example, right? You could be some like rock star, and be worth millions. You better have an estate plan, right?
And also there's another aspect to an estate plan we didn't really touch on all that much, but there is a part of planning that doesn't necessarily involve planning for financial objects or property. Another part of the planning might involve like a power of attorney that Nadira touched on before, or like a healthcare proxy or a HIPAA release. Those are documents that you might see individuals looking to sooner, like perhaps when you're at age 18, it might be something that you might want to consider, or even before. But those are things we didn't really touch on, but that's a whole other aspect of planning that everybody can really relate to, whether you have property or not.
Right. You could be a prodigy at 10 years old, right? A prodigy, and because you have some skill, some talent, right? And you could be worth millions of dollars. Well, you hope that mom and dad, are hooking up with their team of estate planners and protect those assets. And that's a good point, Nick, about the healthcare side. That's a good point as well. All right, so look, everyone knows how to reach out to us, more questions, possible internships, and stay plugged in, follow us, see what we're up to. And we'll hopefully stay in touch again. We'll do this again in the future.
Thank you.
If you like this, please give some feedback to Paige and her team if you like this, and you think you may want us to do this again.
Thank you. We do a survey, Ken. We send a survey out to our students.
Terrific.
Absolutely.
We'd be curious actually on the feedback of that.
I can
Let us
share.
know.
So guys, make sure you please do the survey.
Yes.
Thank you all. You
please
get
do.
3 minutes back. That never happens. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you to our students. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, enjoy.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
Thank
With
you.
pleasure.
Enjoy end of school. Ciao.
Yeah. Good
Yeah,
luck
good
with your
luck.
finals.
And the school's
Yeah.
almost there.
Spring fever. Enjoy.
Yeah.